Al, who's here with us, and some other brothers founded 100 Roses, and recently have asked other folks to join in. So I'm a new member. I'm still a new member, I think, right, Kenny?
Yeah, you're a rosebud.
Rosebud. That's good. It's good look.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say
Hey,
hi.
Francis. Francis, I didn't even see you. Hey, so Francis
I look crazy, but I'll turn my camera on.
I think everybody's met Francis via emails.
I know I've been like emailing everybody for for Women's History Month events. They're gonna be tired of me by the end of March.
Right, but so it's kind of how I felt like for last month. Right? Last month was a lot of activations and activity, and now it's this month, but it's all good. And did you know that April is officially Black Women's History Month?
Yes. I mean, it's every day, but that's exciting. I didn't know until Judy Jackson mentioned it in a meeting one day, and I was like, oh, I had no idea we had a month, which is awesome.
Right. It must be new, kind of, because a lot of people still don't know. I didn't know.
I didn't know either. I was about to ask when it happened.
But but y'all getting like a full actual month, like no leap years, none of that bullshit. Actual month. So I know like I'm gonna celebrate. It's an actual month.
Yes, it's a full days.
They'll figure out a way to make it a leap year. Don't worry. I don't trust the system. They'll figure out a way to make it a leap year. Absolutely. They're like, it needs to lose 3 days.
Right.
There's actually a good legit reason why it's February.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it's WB.
Mm-hmm.
It's between Abraham Lincoln's birthday and
no, it's like a
Frederick
Booker
Douglass's
T.
birthday.
I think Booker T. Yeah, that's what it was. They wanted
Abraham
Booker T.
Lincoln
I think wanted to pair it up with the President's Days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we can't hate on Booker T's rationale at the
time. Look, as Martin would say, we did it to ourselves. Like we did that. So we can't complain. Good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Thanks so much for joining us.
They're pulling up.
Alex, what are you munching on over there?
Alex is always eating. Alex sends me pictures of his dinner like every other day, and it's always good. It always looks good. He's like, "Look what I'm eating today." I'm like, "Yeah, I ordered out again."
Yeah, that's my life. Which is horrible, but
I got you.
I cook the same thing. Do you make like your own, like you chef make different dishes, different recipes? Yeah, exploring. You'll have to share some because I think I make the same 3 things all the time.
Tacos, pizza,
burger,
and rice and beans. Nah.
It's like spaghetti, lasagna.
Spaghetti, lasagna, yeah.
Carbs. That's right, my category. Carbs.
Spaghetti alone, like you shift it and you have some kind of like stroganoff. You can turn it and make it into a Mexican spaghetti. Like one dish, you can make it into like 5 different things.
Yeah, that's what Kenny and I do. That's how we cook.
I'm like,
she's not lying.
I'm always like America's Test Kitchen and like old school Jacques Pepin. I'm always. But this is takeout. This is Chino Latino. This is like Puerto Rican and Chinese, and it was.
Oh my gosh, it's. That type of food is so good. So good.
Like, yeah. It's some new dish. It's one of my favorite joints in town, and it's like this new thing in the menu.
Who pulled it?
And fried rice.
Kenny and I believe that beverages are also the most important part of the meal. So that's what we are there to handle. We do it very, very well.
Yes, I recently got a recipe for a Jolly Rancher drink. It's like, it tastes like Jolly Rancher, but it's made with like all these different liqueur, Ciroc. So I'll have to share the recipe.
That's a I'm about to get lit drink. That's what that sounds like.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah,
I'm curious to know how that tastes because someone, I don't know if you remember, it was called an Astro Glide. And it was like an ice, different colors, and they made a shot. So they bring the shot to you, and you see like gold, yellow, red, blue.
Mommy's so
Awesome.
Wow.
So yeah, I would love to see the recipe for that.
I can't want my belly to zip. Out. Yeah, Mommy's out. I can't want it in Mommy's teeth.
It's the parent life right there.
That's the living at work. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us. We're just going to give it another minute before we get started. But I hope everybody is having a good start to March, which is almost the middle of March. Shock. Amazing. Shock. Because I feel like it was January and now we're in March. So that means June is going to be a blink away. So 2021 is rolling. So before we get started, I think I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Tasha Gilroy, and I'm the Global Executive Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion on Talent at VML Y&R.
I'm pouring water.
Put their call on mute. I think we're getting some feedback here. There we go. All right, thank you. So I'm going to be moderating the discussion this evening. So again, thank you all for joining us. And so just in case some of you may not know our speakers who are joining us this evening, let me just introduce. First, we're going to start with Casryn Taylor McKenzie, who's a senior art director based out of Austin, Texas. And she is actually a director in our agency, VML Y&R. As a designer and art director, she's worked with a wide range of cutting edge clients like Intel, Microsoft, Dell, AT&T, and not to mention some other categories spanning over some nonprofits like tourism and education. So Casryn loves hip hop, Black Girl Magic, good typography, and I always mispronounce that word, and 90s cartoons. So if you just wave, Casryn, thanks for joining us. Next, we have Lisa Kai. Lisa Kai is a motion graphics designer who's currently residing in Los Angeles. She's worked on a large range of motion projects, from all things animation to VFX and editing. And Lisa's interests include illustration, makeup, and horror. And I'm guessing, Lisa, that's horror films?
Yeah, it's horror films, horror illustration, horror everything. I like to get
everything. Oh, good. Last but not least, we have Jordan Dinwiddie, who's a copywriter at Wieden & Kennedy. And Jordan's penned some notable campaigns from Nike, including the latest one, We Play Real campaign. She's appeared on BET's 25 Most Influential People in Sneakers. She's a Chicago native and has found comfort in nerd culture. She's currently writing about her nerd culture in Substack newsletter called The Fangirl. So thanks so much for joining us this evening, Jordan. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to get started. We all know Monday was International Women's Day, and the focus this year was the hashtag Choose to Challenge, where women are asked to challenge themselves and each other and support. So one of the examples might be, that you'll challenge gender stereotypes, right? So first, does this challenge or theme resonate with all of you as creatives? And how are you challenging gender stereotypes in the work that you're producing? Anyone can jump in.
Yeah, I would say that Choose to Challenge Gender Stereotypes definitely really resonates with, I'm sure, all of us women. And something that I was thinking was, like, what am I going to choose to challenge? And I was, just realizing like, dang, I'm, challenging stereotypes by existing, like being a motion graphics designer, especially a female woman of color. It's a very, very small percentage of motion designers in general. So, just existing and just doing what I do, doing what I love, and continuing to try to be confident, to grow my career, to be proud of myself and the work I do. Even something as simple as existing is challenging the stereotypes.
That's a good call out there, Lisa.
Yeah, I have to agree. Just my existence is challenging these status quo. I'm a Black woman with a speech impediment with a job. I'm speaking on this panel and I have a stutter. You know what I mean? That's challenging the status quo. I also am, like I said, I'm a Black girl who's really into nerd culture and does not look like what most white men in like advertising think that like a cool person is, right? Like I have like Wonder Woman tattooed on my arm, Storm tattooed on my thigh, like, you know what I mean? Like I'm not new to this. I'm true to this nerd shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like my entire, like my mother always told me that like just being 100% yourself is a protest. So so like that's why I try to show up as, like the Kool-Aid man, just in like everything I do.
That's a tweet right there. Just being 100% yourself is a protest. I love that. What about you, Casryn?
I agree with the ladies, but I would also just add being an advocate when I can. So I think in my work, I do that by just making sure the people in the room look as diverse as the people that I work with. So that's in productions or stuff, like making sure that like not only are the actors going to be, or the models going to be diverse looking and what we want people to see, all the people behind them are going to be diverse. So, and also just obviously being an art director, dealing with color is a big thing about, people associate colors with different genders. So being able to showcase that and be able to like, well, purple is for everybody. This is not a thing. Like, I don't know, like I'm wearing Black right now. I'm still a woman. Like,
and it's still, it doesn't take away from anything, that we're differently about. And Jordan, Wonder Woman was one of my heroes growing up, so I'm gonna have to check out your tattoo. You're gonna have to send me a photo of that.
Oh, that's cool.
Very cool. Oh, I appreciate that. So back in 2018, there was a study done by Bentley University, which outlined some data that showed 68% of men and 45% of women negotiated their salaries. So when you break that down, Latinas stand out among all women as the least likely to seek a raise. In contrast, Black women have slightly more of an advantage where they're equally likely to speak up and ask for a raise on par with white women, but less likely to actually get one. Asian women are more likely than women to seek promotions, but they too are struggling there because even though they're seeking the promotion and they likely will get them, it's less likely that it will actually work out in the end favorably when compared to other women, namely white women. So did any of you ever face any of these challenges while negotiating your own salary, or did you negotiate your salary if you'd care to share that?
Yeah, I could jump right in. Well, for one, I would say that negotiating in general has always been kind of real foreign, just because it's not like I went to art school. So the last thing they think, they're like, oh, we'll take your money, but we probably won't tell you how to talk about money, because why would they do that? But my first job, like right out of college, working at an advertising agency, I knew that my white male, we were both interns at the time. We both came basically from the same school. Like we both had the same credentials, and he got a job offer, and I happened to be sitting next to him when he had the job offer. He was getting offered $50,000. They offered me a job 2 weeks later, telling me for $30,000. And as soon as I tried to like say something, like I knew I was supposed to negotiate, like I knew like that was something that was like, I'm supposed to say something, like I'm not just supposed to get the offer that they give me, right? Like, but when I said something, like he basically was like, my white ECD was like, no, like this is all we can do. And obviously coming out of art school and having this amount of debt, I was like, okay, well, crap, like I have to take this, because if I don't take this, then I'm not going to have a job. And if I don't have a job, what am I going to do with all this debt? But as I've learned, I've been in advertising about 6 years now. So I realized that negotiation is how you showcase your value and how that company showcases their value for you. So if you don't feel comfortable, like this is your opportunity to be like, hey, like, I know I'm going to be of value to your company. I know you're going to value me. Like, here's my time to actually showcase that. So I think over the years, I finally have felt comfortable actually like speaking up and trying and saying like, hey, well, you offered me this here. Let me, add 10K on that because I'm worth it. And especially now in this environment where they need people like us because they haven't had people like us. Like, I just feel like, oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
I just feel like it's an opportunity for us all to like speak up and be able to share that and kind of be like, hey, like, I am worth this amount of money. Like, it's not because I'm a Black woman. It's because I will bring value, and my diverse background will bring value. So
it's because of your skill set, right? That's why you're being hired. It's the talent that you're bringing to the agency, which they will make money off of. Correct, right? So it's a commodity in your ideas, right? So that should be compensated. I learned years ago where you should always be negotiating, even when you're coming in. But we don't talk about that as much as we should with junior talent or early talent coming into industry. And so you're always kind of trying to catch up, and the bar is moving faster than you're being promoted. So, where the pay gap really begins at the very start, right? You, Jordan, anything by way of negotiation or did you do it differently, or have you done it differently?
Well, I did not know about I got the job through a more unconventional path. I also went to an overpriced art school, like most art school students do. Shouts out to Columbia College, you did nothing for me. But I was a strategy intern that then got into copywriting. Alberto Ponte was like, you're not gonna do this no more, you're gonna do this. So I didn't have a book. I didn't know how to write an ad. I just would tweet reckless things on the internet. And he was like, you just apply that to paper. So when I was offered the job, he just said flat out, you are going to make exactly what the 12ers make when they get hired. So there was a program called WK12 way back when. And they were like a mini ad school within the agency. So he made it so that I would get exactly what they made coming in.
Even though you had the experience as a strategist already?
Well, I was a strategy intern. I was only
okay, so you were still an intern.
Yeah. I was still an intern. So I get strategy intern into a copywriting offer. So I did not rock the boat there, mainly because I was like, I didn't come from like an ad school background. So like, it was very much a thank you for taking a chance on a kid or whatever. Thank you. But then after my first commercial came out, which made CNN was a big hit. It was the LeBron coming back from coming back to Cleveland ad. I was like, y'all
wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That was a big deal. That was a big deal.
Thank you. I did that one, and then basically I did 3 LeBron commercials in a row after. So that one, the Cavs won, so that went at, and then the one after that. So I was batting 1,000.
So you were on fire.
Yeah, period. Yeah. And I basically said, so y'all got to pay up now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I said, this is what I've done. All that stuff. They gave me a raise, and I actually just asked for another raise Monday. So
good. Good for you. Congratulations on that.
So,
dynamic work. So anything that you stood out about going in to say this is the work that you all are getting?
Well, I mean, without saying too much, I mean, like I'm the only Black woman creative on my account. It's been that way for as long as I've been at Wyden. It's only been me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just basically said, like, you could not have made We Play Real.
Right.
I wasn't there to write it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, my experience is what allows things, you know what I mean, allows me to make the work that I make. And like, you know what I mean? I was just very blunt. I was like, I'm the only Black woman. I'm the only woman creative that's not like the only female writer on this account. I've been here too long, and the stress that y'all put me through emotionally, and the emotional stress that these clients put me through, y'all don't pay me enough.
Right.
Y'all don't pay me enough to deal with it. So
they never do.
Exactly. So run up.
Right. So
you know what I mean? And not to always go back to my mama, but my mama always told me, know your worth than that tax. Do not accept no bullshit salary.
Right. Right. Because again, if it's a slippery slope, it may start with 10,000 or 15,000, but then that continues to grow in a short amount of time. It can quickly turn into 50 to 75 to 100,000 very quickly. You would be part in comparison to other people with your skill set and background and those competencies, right? What about you, Lisa? Did you have something to weigh in on this? Have you negotiated?
Yeah. I was gonna say, Jordan, your parents sound amazing. Like growing up in an Asian household, my parents were immigrants from China. Love them, great people. But like, I think it just a lot with the Asian culture, me and my sisters were kind of told to like, keep our voices down, not speak out that much, not like rustle, like don't shake the boat, type of deal, like kind of all throughout life, including a job. My dad once even told me like, he was like, when I hire people, if they talk too much, I like, I'm like turned off by that. And so I think that just really stuck with me throughout like, my whole life until now. I'm still trying to unlearn that and know that like, my voice and my skills, deserve a place in this world and deserve a spotlight on it. But yeah, also went to an art school that did not teach you anything about negotiation or anything about real life skills. Yeah. And I went to a college too that I had, I think 5 internships before I went to full-time, and never negotiated for any of those internships, never negotiated for any of my jobs out of college, really didn't even realize it was a thing. And actually once a recruiter told me like literally like, thank you for being so easy to hire, because I didn't even know I could negotiate.
Wow. So yeah. They said the words, thank you for being so easy to hire, because for the most part, when the recruiter contacts you and you're in that phase of we're about to give you an offer, they expect that you're going to negotiate. Like they expect you to come back with a different number. They expect that you're going to request additional time off or additional something, maybe a flex schedule, et cetera, et cetera. Like they expect that. So when people don't do that, that is an easy breezy way, to bring someone on. So
absolutely. And I wish I knew that, but no, I didn't have the confidence in myself. I was, kind of like more so on the train of thought of like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful for this opportunity, and not fully realizing my self-worth. Like, of course you can still be grateful and know your self-worth, but yeah, so something I'm still working on and hope to get there soon.
Yeah, you will get there. And then again, the more and more you start to exercise that voice and start to have those conversations, you'll start to build that muscle to say, no, this is what I need. This is what I have to have. And, there's going to be times where I think people will see, once you speak up and ask for what you want and deserve, that's the place that you're going to be, again, appreciated for what you bring to the agency, right? And what you bring to the talent and what you bring, to the industry and the work that you're producing. So now, as creators, have any of you have mentors or people who are advocating for you? And has it had any impact on your career to date?
Yeah, I give a lot of this credit to, like I said, I wasn't even a creative intern or anything like that when I came to Wyden. I was a strategy intern, and I had to write some tweets, and Alberto Ponte, who's the global creative director on Nike, saw that and was like, yeah, nope, you shouldn't be writing briefs, you should be writing the real things. And he's looked out for me ever since. I think him, and I think the very first person was Shiraz Gorman. I don't know if anybody knows Shiraz Gorman, who is a copywriter. She actually helped start the Marcus Graham Project years ago. She ran their curriculum for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a former Widener as well, which was a really fun thing to learn, that she was a copywriter there and a strategist pulling double duty. And so she kind of gave me the insight of, you're about to go, whereas like Alberto was the creative, like everything's roses and sunshine, you're gonna be great, don't worry. Shiraz was like, let me tell you about
the real deal
about what these white men do here. You know what I mean? Like, she gave me like you about to go into Portland, into Wyden. This is what you need to know before you go.
Right.
Go in
like
there.
the real deal.
Like,
so you had a clear understanding of the opportunity and what was about to happen.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and so I always give them both a lot of credit for.
That's amazing, and that's amazing that someone saw your talent with writing briefs and said, you should be over here, right? Mm-hmm. Pushing and advocating for you to be, moved over to the creative side. That's pretty dope.
Mm-hmm.
Casryn.
Well, first and foremost, I am from Wisconsin. So if you think about the percentage of Black people and you think about the percentage within creatives, you're like,
right.
So being in Wisconsin, I did not have any mentors or anybody. Well, I had my friend who I would just kind of hit up every once in a while and get advice, because he had started his own business and was doing his thing. And he had moved to LA. So I find that I have a lot of advocates and people who are senior above me who I kind of just bug, and I'm a question person. I'm the person in the meeting that if I don't understand something clearly, I'm gonna be like, hey, what up with the questions? So throughout my career and stuff, even being it from an intern, when I was in Wisconsin for about 3 years of my career. So throughout those 3 years, I would just anybody, anywhere, if I didn't know what you were doing, I was asking questions. It's just kind of how my personality is. However, when I did move out of Austin, Shantika Sayers, that was kind of my, oh my goodness, this is a Black woman. She's an ECD. Oh my goodness. I've never met anybody like her. I just sit here and all oh my goodness. But then after that, that moment of her kind of taking me out of Wisconsin and bringing me to Austin, that kind of was where I got to find other mentors or people like them, as well as I've always been a mentor to people, just because since I didn't see people like me, anybody who was interested or wanted to learn about what I did or how I got to where I was, I just was like, here's my knowledge. I don't got a lot of it, but I'm sharing.
Take some intel, right? So you were able to build a network community of people who you lean on and who are now leaning on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Lisa? Do you have a mentor or have you had mentors to date?
I haven't had like a direct mentor, I would say. This kind of makes me think like, oh shit, maybe I should go find one. But I will say I've been extremely lucky to have people that I work with that have advocated for me and been willing to mentor me. I feel like consistently I've had people manage me who really do believe in me and my worth and want to like set me up for success and want to like figure out what more interests and responsibilities I can take on to grow. So, I'm extremely grateful for that because I know that's, a pretty lucky thing to have.
Right. It is. No, it is. And that valued relationship will continue to expand, right? As you go on, and even, if the day comes when you leave Tinder or you do something different, those relationships stay connected to you throughout your career. So they're important. So now there is a lack of representation for women in senior roles, especially for creative. I mean, it's across the board, but for creative especially. So how do you think that will affect your career growth, or do you think it has already?
I think it has completely. I feel like I've had people who I don't like to compare apples. Like, I don't like to say like, oh, well, my work is less than because of whatever. But I do know people who I graduated with who are like ACDs at places and they're white women or white males and they just happen to be the ECD at a small boutique agency or, so I do feel like not having leadership that looks like us and can advocate for us is a huge issue that I've seen. Not saying that we won't be leaders one day, but it does affect how fast you move forward based off of the people that can actually relate to your experiences and what you have to bring to the table.
Right, very true. But when you think about the fact that I've been in this for about 15 years now, and to see that there has been this focus around women in leadership, and then especially for creative. And so organizations like 3% Movement were created to kind of push against that, right? But just asking, have any networks been supportive or have been helpful to you, like the 3% Movement or Women Who Create? Has anyone leaned into any of those networks? Or I mean, just asking if it's been helpful or if you haven't gone that route.
Mm-hmm. I use, I'm sorry, Jordan, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay. I use Tony. It's a Facebook group. It's all Black women. So I use that a lot just to like I said, I ask questions. So if I ever have a question or if someone ever messaged me to write a question, I'll ask. So that's really been a great resource, especially since it is a group of all Black women. And then I did get laid off COVID, the start of COVID. So all of those resources that kind of now we're popping up, but we're being made during that time have been super helpful. Hashtag coffee, just to name one. There's a bunch of them that have been super resourceful, especially to showcase that we are out there and that we do exist, because they think that we're invisible, or I don't know. They just don't think we're here.
The myth lives on and on. Yeah.
So those have been super helpful to me. What do you got, you guys?
Yeah, I was gonna say Tony. I don't post a lot in Tony because I don't use Facebook often anymore, like most people. But I have lurk in Tony quite often. As I say, coffee's also been one that I have been put out there. And I would also say I was in London for 6 months. And I think that POCC, I know it started in London, but it's now kind of expanding internationally. POCC was really helpful when I was living in London.
Okay. All right. What about you, Lisa? Are you connected to any networks or have you leaned on any networks to help support you?
Yeah, a really cool network for women and non-binary motion artists is Punimation, also part of the Facebook group. But yeah, like Jordan said, not on Facebook a ton anymore, but it's just a really awesome place where women can post their portfolios, their reels, job postings, and just try to source from like a pool of like women and non-binary motion designers. So it's a great resource. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So just to build on the question about the networks or women in leadership roles. So there's been studies where there's still that kind of perception about women in leadership being catty or bitchy or difficult. Do you think that's still a true perception, or is that still kind of one of those things that we still have a lot of work to pull down? I know as Black women, we still are battling the angry Black woman, or the woman, who's always outspoken, always vocal, always showing up in a different way. So do you think that still resonates in terms of women in leadership for creative?
I mean, I'm trying to, how do I say this tactfully? I think that there's always been for the longest, there's always been a kind of like Mean Girls kind of way of engaging with each other in a work environment, especially if you're in the same department. I've seen it more so on the outside as far as like watching it happen to other women, specifically white women. I see it happen. Like I watch it happen. It's like it's like watching National Geographic for real. But as far as like other Black women at Wyden, I think we've all at least done our best, especially in Portland, because there's only but so many of us.
So many of you, right?
We definitely, even if we don't kick it all as a group, I know like we can call on whoever if we need anything, asking a question, you know what I mean? But but since I have never seen a Black woman in leadership in my experience, it's like high up, like I mean, like at the top. Crystal Thomas is here. She's doing great things as in account person there. But as far as like creatively, I don't know what that looks like. I have been bullied by white women at in certain times, and then they've been checked swiftly. Right. I'll say this: they've tried to bully me, and then they get checked swiftly.
Okay, right. That was a correction, because that's different.
But so I definitely but I think as far as I've never seen it from a creative. Sorry, that was a long ramble. Like I've never seen it, but I know that our community is always one that is there to support each other.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the perception, because again, there's only a handful of women at the top of the game, period, in creative, that there is this perception, and sometimes, like you mentioned, it's true, where they're kind of really are battling not only with other counterparts that are male in the business, but even with each other. And so that whole idea of there can only be one, or there can only be two, or we have enough of them, I think kind of pivots people against each other. So I'm glad that you're recognizing that you need to have that representation for you to emulate and look up to, but that the group that it's together is rallying with each other and supporting each other, because that's critical. It's very critical.
I have had it where it was like another Black, like if you were, say you wanted to work at a certain job, I have had it where like other Black women kind of were not gatekeeping in the sense, but kind of like, I don't know if it was like a sense of fear because they were the only Black person there, or if it was kind of like no, I'm protecting you from not being here. But I have had it where people have kind of like slammed the door and was like, actually, no. Like,
right. Yeah, and I know that sometimes I've heard or seen women in the agency, Black women, kind of rally around and say, you don't want to do that because we're trying to protect you, right? Yeah. But it comes off sometimes as if you don't want me, like, like the crab in the barrel, right? Where it's like, we're all here, so I have to stay here. And so, you know, as long as intent is clear, then that's different. But, you know, I think perception again plays a big part in that.
Yeah, I feel like it definitely depends on the environment. But I do feel like all kinfolk, what's the saying? Y'all know what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Yep.
So I think it's just like, as anywhere you find your, like I've been saying this whole time, you find your advocates, you find, yes, not all kinfolk are kinfolk.
Kinfolk, right. For those of you who don't know the phrase, yes.
But yeah, I think it's just more about, like, for me, it's like, okay, well, now that we know each other, like, we can talk about work, we can talk about how we get us in places. And I feel like there are a lot of women who are doing that. And I think especially for like Black women who are in leadership, I think since they have been through, like, you know, you've been through experience where you are the only one and you're just tired of it. Like, you don't want to be the only one anymore. Yeah. So I feel like a lot of people in those senior positions, even if like some of them are not in like certain locations, I think that those people are trying to continue to bring other people with them. And I don't feel like I've actually, this is a side tangent, but I've actually gotten feedback that I was too quiet at work. Like, so like, since I wasn't like, hi, like, and I'm really like
you know, talking it up and
like if you ever meet me
social
like,
with everyone, like, really.
But since I was not like super like up in their face, like I just like I would come to work at like 8:30, I would leave at 6, and like just like, you know, focus on my work. I got feedback like, hey, like, we don't think you want to be here, like you're not, you know, like, and I'm like, so I have to entertain you for me to
feel like I'm contributing. So
yeah, so I do not work there anymore. However, like that was the feedback that I was getting when I wasn't being like super like, hey, how's it going? Like, so I think there's two different, you know, realms of like, yeah, you might be called like the B word, or you might be like, oh, well, they're super catty. But I think if you're too quiet, then they say like, oh, like there's something wrong with her. She's not like engaging with us. Like, you know, she's not going to be a cultural fit, you know, like, so I think they just decide and choose what they pick at, to be honest.
Right. Yeah, and Walt is a member of 100 Roses, and he's been talking about this probably the last couple of weeks. It's gotten more intense, posting about performance evaluations and feedback and kind of what really goes on when people are being told, you know, when you're on Zoom calls, your facial expressions don't seem happy, you're not smiling enough, or, you know, or when you do laugh, you know, like you seem like you're not serious enough, and like these really like things that should not even be recognized as part of your performance, let alone like called out, right? So continue to monitor those things as they happen. And if you feel like you're in a position to address it in real time. So then there's no confusion when the performance evaluation happens and it's like, well, you got this feedback, but you don't understand the feedback, or it doesn't resonate, or it doesn't make sense, right? If it doesn't, you know, make it make sense, kind of thing.
Yeah, Casryn,
Lisa?
Sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna say, Casryn, I really relate with, you know, people saying like, oh, you're too quiet. Luckily, I've come out of my shell per se a lot these past couple of years, but that used to be like my major critique was like, you know, Lisa needs to speak up more. She needs to ask more questions. And I always felt like I was giving off a weird vibe, but like people weren't approaching me or like bringing me into like, you know, like if I was a new person, if no one there was really there to like bring me in, it's kind of just like I'm like, you know, a little shy and a little introverted. It's hard to make that first move when everyone else knows each other so well. And like I said, it's gotten better and it's not really like a problem, my current situation, but like yeah, definitely relate with that. But yeah,
it shouldn't be like that. Like you should be able to like, they always talk
just
about
live your life.
like you bringing yourself to work and you like, like you should be able to be quiet if you're quiet. Like if that's your personality, you shouldn't have to like, and it's not being rude because you're not like, hi, how's it going? Did you have a good weekend? Like,
exactly.
Like,
Yeah,
hi, like,
yeah. Advertising is just so strange because they want everyone to be an extrovert, and I very much ride that middle because if I don't want to talk, I don't want to talk. I ain't got nothing to say. So please don't force me to talk because there's one thing that you don't want, and that's for me to do something I don't want to do.
Right. That's the line of being an inclusive leader. If you're an inclusive leader, you are nuanced enough to understand that people on the team or people that you work with, whether it's YNR, Tinder, Wyden, that you are recognizing that this person either culturally or maybe they're a natural introvert, or the person who is, on the other side of that, like hyper extrovert, right? How to manage that, right? And if you're an inclusive leader, you can engage in all of that and then tap into the thing that makes the most sense in bringing out the best work in that talent, right? But the industry, and I'll put myself in this, we haven't done a good job at even providing the tools to managers and leaders, period, across the board, much less helping them become inclusive leaders, for sure. Yeah. So just wanted to get to a couple other questions and then trying to open up the floor to, because I'm sure some folks might have some comments or some questions for you. So now as creatives, I'm sure you all have to stand behind the work that you're creating and that you're producing. So how do you influence the people who are the decision makers for the work that you're creating? Anyone? Like, is it a particular way you go about, either presenting or, if someone is always going to give a lot of pushback before they really even hear a fully fleshed out idea, do you approach it differently? Or is there, some kind of advice you can maybe share even in how you do that?
I think my biggest one would be if that some creative directors or whoever you're presenting to might not fully grasp it in script, or I would say always bring examples. You know what I mean? I think that's always been my biggest thing, are like references and things like that. Even if they don't understand it in script, if you see there's like this package like this, or you mean like almost like a log line, you know how they're like, it's blank plus blank, or like, like Seinfeld meets, or like Insecure was, I guess Girlfriends meets Curb, you know what I mean? And so it's like that helps. That was a really bad example,
but I get it. Yes.
Yeah. But kind of using that kind of way of thinking to help explain your ideas a bit more. I think that's always been my biggest thing, or just like bringing examples, because most of the time you're presenting to middle-aged white men who don't know what's hitting anymore, or like, having to like, I had to explain what a fan cam was the other day to someone. I was like, they're all over the internet. What do you mean? And it's like, oh, because you're on a different part of the internet than I am. You know what I mean?
Wow. Okay, so then when that happens, then Jordan, then is that person like the decision maker on whether or not your work is actually moves forward and goes to the next phase?
Well, I mean, at least bringing it to my creative directors, and then usually they'll say, okay, cool, I understand it. Let's take it to the client, but we need to have that. But we need to have some sort of example. I just always make sure that if I am presenting to my bosses, I have some sort of example. If I'm presenting, because like also like, so Alberto Ponte is from Argentina. Like English is, he is a copywriter, but English is still his second language. And then my art director is just a corn-fed boy from Pennsylvania. So like he don't know what's hidden either, for real. So I think always just having examples are really good.
Right.
Just to make things very clear, and like just like, and sourcing your references. And then I just take that and we put it in a deck and we present, you pretty it up and you present it to clients.
Right. For sure.
And to add on to what Jordan said, the examples are pretty big. And I also like to make sure that I am in the room when they are presenting my ideas.
Yep.
Sometimes, creative directors are busy. They hear a lot of ideas throughout the day, and then they're trying, like, depending on like the level of where you are with the client or how they like to present with the client, sometimes they only let the creative director speak. So I definitely always prefer to be in the room with like when they say something, just because if there is a point that they miss that's really important to the story, or if there's something that's culturally relevant that needs to be said, like I like to be like, okay, like, hey, like this, like this is an important part of the storytelling that we're trying to say. I also like to make sure that whatever I'm showcasing is as diverse as possible. So from like, I mostly work on a lot of commercial brands. So a lot of like business focused things. And when they think of IT people, they only think of a white man. I'm going to be the person like, no, my IT woman is Black. She has cornrows and she's going to come to work in this outfit and she's going to look amazing. Like, so that's usually like what I like to do when I'm presenting, just to make sure like it gets to where it needs to be.
It needs to go, right. And then if you're not in the room, they don't get the whole context of that, right? So that's really critical. So that's really good and important to know, that being in the room when the work is actually being presented or shared, so that you can add in the pieces that they would miss. What about you, Lisa?
Yeah, but totally agree with both the points that Carson and Jordan made. I think also just like finding that confidence within yourself and trying to stand your ground, which I know I could practice a little bit more, but just working on that and just trying to like be like, hey, I think this is legitimately a good idea. Like, let me give it a shot. But sometimes there are points where like you can only push so far, and if you keep getting no's, you gotta just like, unfortunately, be like, okay, all right. But just if you really believe an idea, just give it a shot. The worst thing that can happen is no, and just just try to be confident and sure.
I also, Lisa, thinking about that, I always bring a wild card, like something I know like is like, this gonna cost $200 million, but here it is. Isn't it beautiful? It's not really $200 million.
That's a good one, Carson. That's a good one. Like, this is something you'll never do, but you know what? Hey,
or even like with designs too, like here's a safe version, and here's like, we're gonna go in the future and this is amazing version. Like,
okay. Like this is like, let's all just hold hands and jump off the cliff together. So now speaking about that, right? Because you all have a seat at the table as creatives and as women in these creative positions. So you do have a unique opportunity to impact the gender disparity across the business and advertising and in the industry. So how do you think you personally strive to keep creating inclusive content, right? Because you just mentioned, Carson, that, your IT person is the Black woman who has the cornrows, who's going to have on a dope outfit. And this is my IT person that I'm going to present, not what they would probably think an IT person would look like, right? So what are some other examples of how you're doing that?
I think it's down to even who you work with. You know what I mean? Like, as I had a Black sound mixer. You know what I mean? I used a Black woman who's a sound designer and sound mixer. You know what I mean? I had a Black guy who was a colorist. And our editor, you know what I mean, was a queer single mom. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's, I think it's as important on camera and putting out those images out into the world. Like, I made sure that there were a breadth of skin tones and body types, and Black girls with blue braids roller skating, or I mean, like girls with grills, showing every type of Black woman, whether that's ghetto, that's quirky, that's whoever. All those Black women deserve to be seen and be valued by the swoosh, and for being who they are, not for what their bodies can do for them. You know what I mean, and making sure that the people behind the camera, in this sense, like editing it or on the Zoom, were just as diverse and wanted to help with that mission as much as possible.
Right, because they're gonna take different care with it, right? It's a different focus.
Yep.
It's not just the others or people who you can't connect to or having a shared lived experience, right? When you feel connected or you see the representation, the narrative changes.
And I mean, even that, or just like the nuance, right? Like I'm a big sound design nerd. So like there was a little girl with beads in her head, and I was like, I need to hear the
beads,
the clacking of the beads. You know what I mean? And our mixer got that. They're like, oh yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Like there's just so many things. You know what I mean? Like Delta's being able to step. You need to hear their feet stomp in unison. You know what I mean? It's all these. It's it helps make everything feel just a little more richer and a little more textured when there are those elements of like care and nuance to put into.
Right. Yes, it makes a difference to the storytelling. Lisa?
Yeah, totally agree. I think like on top of like hiring more people of color and also like showcasing more diversity in general and marketing material, really just extending your hand to other like women of color creatives, and just helping, pave the way. Like, with us all, we have experience, definitely more experience than, someone in college. So, just extending your help to, people who are from your college that reach out for help, or I help one of my a girl that another Asian designer who's currently going through the same program I go through. I help like do portfolio reviews for her and like just giving her advice and just extending your hand. I think is just a really awesome way.
Right, which is super dope, right? Because we open up the door. If you're in, you should be holding the door to let others in with you, right? That's pretty critical in how we're going to continue to evolve and push the industry along, right? So I'm just gonna pause here. We only have a few more minutes left, but I did want to give the opportunity to open up some questions from the floor. So some of our guests who joined the discussion this evening, if you have any questions or wanted to make comments, the chat was lighting up as we were talking, and there was some really interesting comments and some definitely some kudos and definitely some yep, we need to do more of that. So the advice and what you all have been sharing has really been helpful in resonating with the group. Any questions from anyone participating this evening? Khalil? You're on mute.
Yep.
Here we go.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good, thank you.
Good. Thanks for everything thus far. Beautiful presentation. And my question is, given that it's, from what I can see, only men of color in this Zoom meeting, could the speakers speak to male privilege in their environments? I mean, obviously we're very well aware of the racial, privileges that occur, but with respect to specifically male privilege, not limited to white men.
I work on a sports brand. So there's a lot of, excuse me being so vulgar, there's a lot of, genital swinging around that happens. Not to say that you need one to be a man. I just wanted to say that. But there's just a lot of it, and there's a lot of, I've had experiences where men have tried to speak for me, or have tried to, I was in the room and read my scripts for me, and I was like, nope, she wrote it. She wrote that. She did that. So I will, thank you. I can take this piece of paper and read it my damn self. There are recently on a couple of projects on some different accounts, people ignored me. It was a team of 3, and they only the creative directors only addressed the men. I was left off of a pre-production meeting, and I was like, nope. So what we're not gonna do is that. I don't know. I've just always, I come from a family of loud women who did not, like, we're like, I won't say that the men were betas in my family, but they were. So like, I just,
Yeah,
I made sure, I've just been like, you're not going to run me out of somewhere that I'm supposed to be. I get paid just as much as you do. You're not going to run me out of nowhere where I'm supposed to be. I got to show up to work too. So thank you, sir. Check yourself, read the room. You know what I mean?
Thank you for that. Yes, you're not going to run me out of spaces where I'm supposed to be. Absolutely. Any other questions or comments for the ladies?
I want to have Jordan's like her atmosphere when I grow up, because I am not that bold when it comes to stuff like that.
No,
So I guess for me, from like a male privilege thing, just be an advocate. Like if you see that someone needs to talk or should be talking, let them speak. Like, and don't, like, if you're in that room and you see someone like interrupting or like trying to talk over someone, just be that person. Like if they're not that person, to be like, hey, like actually Casryn was speaking, like she was saying something. Like that's kind of my big, like, that's how I really know who's in the room for me. Like if you're gonna make sure that I get a chance to talk, because sometimes I don't have that, like this is fine, obviously it's Zoom, you know, things happen, but sometimes I don't have that confidence enough to be like, hey, let me stop and, you know, speak up for myself. So if you want to be a better male ally, like be able to say that and be like, hey, like Casryn was speaking, like let her talk.
Totally. And another tip is just like, don't be threatened by women / like, especially younger women. I definitely feel like if I speak out against like, or like, you know, have a different opinion than an older male, like definitely I feel the male ego, you know, like so fragile. Like it's just like, yo, we're all working together here. You know what I mean? Like, let's not work against the grain. Don't like try to like, I don't know, assert your male privilege, especially if you're white, like white male privilege over us to, I don't know. Maybe it's not even like something that some people are consciously doing, but you know, it's something that they need to unlearn and yeah, make space for other people.
Make space, right, for everyone. So there was a question in the chat. So how has the COVID pandemic affected your work and or team dynamics? Has been a major shift for all of us, but how has it personally affected you?
Cool. Well, I don't know about y'all, but I lost my job because of COVID. Like budgets changed, like they didn't have the budget anymore. So I lost my job. So from like May to September, well, actually from May to, we'll just say February, because I just got my full-time position at VMLY&R. I was a contractor. So working, like still working during that time because I was doing like, you know, quick freelance stuff, but really just not like kind of at like how I networked and how I got myself out there was really completely different than I've ever had to do before. Like a lot of it was joining a lot of those networks and putting my name on lists and like calling people and having coffee Teams meetings and just trying to like introduce myself to people who were in New York or in LA or wherever, like just because I couldn't be in a room with them. So that completely changed my work dynamic, as well as I have a toddler. So her being in the background of meetings and me trying to focus and still trying to teach her, because obviously we want smart, kind humans. But that's definitely been challenging and interesting to kind of see that, as well as just like the heaviness that comes with trying to work and have all these different things thrown back in your face of violence that you just over and over have seen.
Over and over.
And then have to bring that to work where you're like, do I really want to have this conversation about why you've been racist from the beginning?
Right. And then come in and then work on the team, right? So yeah. So Coretta has a question. Has the spotlight on social injustice placed any extra stress on the role in your agency and how you represent your work? So you just touched on that, Carson, right? So showing up Black after a number of incidents that have been happening, or conversations, right, that have been happening. So Jordan and Lisa, anything that has happened with you by way of that added stress in your role at Tinder or at Wyden?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just tired.
Mm-hmm.
Like I literally, I think I did one thing and I just said, you know what, I'm not, well, number one, there was a lot more work that needed to be done, right? They, you know, I mean, I feel like this has happened across all agencies, but it's, hey, we love you, we hear you. Now, can you write this thing about racism for us?
Right, because you, the person, represent all of it.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And so I, if anything, I had to learn like, hey, I did 2 of them. I did 1 of them. I've done none of them. Don't put me on any of them. How about that? How about I focus on selling cheese and making the best cheese work I can make? You know what I mean? Like, I definitely think, I mean, I don't have that luxury. And I think Nike does its best to say something through the lens of sport where it is deemed appropriate. But it always has to be appropriate. I think also the big thing is being tasteful and not just, you know, posting
just
Black
saying it to be saying it, right?
Saying it, you know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
I'm in a bit of a unique situation. It's a great situation, but my core team, we're all we're almost all women of color, and yeah, it's after yeah, like I'm sorry, it was an uncomfortable spotlight. 2 of the girls on my team are Black, and especially after the BLM protests, like they had a huge spotlight shining on them, and then feeling like yeah, just a lot of interesting stuff happened.
Yeah, it's a lot. It gets very heavy. Right, but even for you, Lisa, right now, there's so much happening in the Asian community and xenophobia, and like that, it's something that more people are really starting to speak up about, and really have more attention to how we can support each other. So by way of that lens, have you felt that added stress to show up in, you know, as an Asian woman at Tinder, doing the work that you're doing, knowing that all of these things are happening, you know, in society, and the stress of bringing that to work?
Yeah, definitely feel that stress, and just really feel like when it comes to my team, like I feel like our voices just aren't necessarily as heard as much as like if we were white, you know, just like all across the board. And it's just really discouraging to be asked to like share things about our experiences, and then kind of getting it a little bit disqualified. And yeah, it's definitely tough for sure.
Right, but continue to support each other, right? And so, you know, you now have a whole network of people who've now met you for being on panel this evening. And so we're here, but continue to support each other in your respective organizations, and know that there is an additional community that is looking out for you and wanting you to succeed in every aspect of your career, and wanting you to succeed as people, as humans, right? Because you're human first, and that's what you bring to being a creative, and the work is better because of that, right? So I appreciate you all for participating in the event this evening. It was our first official kickoff for Women's History Month, and it was a dynamic group of speakers, and I'm so honored to have been able to actually have the pleasure of meeting you, but then also being able to have the discussion with you this evening. So I appreciate this. And for everyone for joining us this evening, thanks so much for participating, and happy Women's History Month, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Tasha,
Thank you,
you're a
guys.
natural. You should have your own talk show.